I bought a house a few months ago and moved in last month. The previous owner was a friendly old man that could no longer live alone, so he decided to sell and move in with his daughter. Just to be clear now, apparently he had been allowing use of his driveway to his disabled neighbor lady, largely because street parking is extremely limited, and what little street parking there is pretty much instantly occupied. What I am saying is, unless you have a driveway, you end up having to park a good 5-minute walk away, and that's the best case scenario. I put disabled in quotation marks because the lady in question is just really overweight, and I am not sure if that counts as disabled. Obviously I was unaware of this, so I was surprised to see a large SUV parked in my driveway when I moved in. I ended up having to knock on several doors asking whose car it was because the movers could not stand still on the busy road too long. I figured out it was the neighbor's car, so after a good 10 minutes of knocking, an extremely angry enormous lady opened the door. I told her to move the car, and she immediately started arguing that the neighbor said it was fine. I told her he moved out. I moved in, and no, it is not fine, and to move it because the movers need to unload my stuff. She begrudgingly did. I ended up seeing her walking back half an hour later, completely wet with sweat. Now a few days later I went back to work, and lo and behold, the SUV is parked in my driveway again. I go over there again, spend 20 minutes knocking on the door before this lady opens the door, again, visibly angry. I tell her to move her car. My driveway is not public parking. She protests, saying her ankles can't take walking the distance, and claims I can easily walk. I tell her that while that might be true, it's my goddamn driveway and I want to park there myself. Again she moves her car. Again I spot her half an hour later drenched in sweat making her way home. Well, it happened again a week ago, and this time she would not open her door. I got tired of it and had her SUV towed. She of course came to my house to scream at me. I told her to get the hell off my property. A few days later I had a small fence installed with a lock on it to make sure it did not happen again. I have since been getting dirty looks from her and one other neighbor, and when I told my mom, she told me I should be nicer to people. I do feel sort of bad too. She clearly struggles with the walk after all. I am a 33 years old female, have been engaged to my fiancé, 37 male, for 5 months. We don't share finance because that's what he wants. I got a raise on my salary. Now I earn 30% more than he does, and I notice that he's been using this to ask me to pay for him and his friends. Whenever I say no, or why should I pay for this, he'd respond with the 30%, that's why. He acts as if the 30% is unfair or that I'm not deserving of it. Several times he has tricked me to pay for his and his friends' meals by asking me publicly. Let me say that I'm too nice to say no. I hate confrontation, especially when we're at a public place like a restaurant, so I just grin and pay. Last Tuesday, he asked me to join him and his buddies for dinner. I told him from the start I wasn't paying for their food and he shouldn't expect me to. He said he got this and no worries. We got to the restaurant, met his friends, ordered food. And in the middle of the meal he leaned in and whispered that I would be paying for everything he and his friends ordered. I got so mad I whispered back, no. But he probably relied on me not causing a scene in public and in front of his friends. He said, "You have enough money, you could pay for everyone's food, 30%, remember?" I was fuming inside. Instead of reacting negatively and losing my temper, I waited till the bills arrived. They were already split from the start when we first ordered. I paid for mine, then I excused myself to the restroom. I then sneaked out from there, got into my car and went home. I started getting phone calls from my fiancé, then texts asking where I was. I texted back saying I didn't appreciate how he put me in this situation and basically tricking me into paying for his and his friends' food. I told him I went home, then stopped replying. An hour later he came and started yelling at me, calling me selfish, irrational, cheapskate and childish for sneaking out like that and leaving him stuck with a bill he could not pay. He had to call his brother for help. We had a loud argument, then he walked out. His friends didn't speak to me on this, but he told me they're disappointed in my behavior and are telling him to take time and reflect on the type of woman he's gonna be married to. He said that because the restaurant wasn't expensive, then I could have just paid. He admitted not telling me about it till later, knowing I'd refuse. He still thinks my reaction was childish and unacceptable. My girlfriend and I have been together for about a year. Most everything is great except one thing. If I tell her I'm sick / not feeling well / hurt, she refuses to believe me. If I have a cold, she tells me I'm faking it until it goes away and then says, "See, you are fine." I'm rarely sick, so it's never been a major issue. But she has zero sympathy when I'm sick. She grew up with hypochondriac parents who were always sick with something, often self-diagnosing themselves with fatal maladies. She has limited contact with them, and the time I met them, I was told by them that they didn't have long left to live. I get it, growing up in that household must have been awful. But what happened on Sunday just sent me over the edge. Girlfriend and my sister wanted to check out this event and we were all supposed to go. I woke up with excruciating back pain and could barely breathe. Girlfriend got so mad at me for ruining this that she wouldn't speak to me. As she was about to leave, I asked her not to leave because I thought something was wrong. She said no and left. I threw up in my bed and eventually called my parents. I was too embarrassed to call 911. And my mother and brother hauled me to the hospital. I was whisked back, and after 20 minutes I was diagnosed with kidney stones. Fentanyl and gravel, and I had a CT scan and then went for a procedure to bust the kidney stones. 5 hours later and I was laying on my parents' sofa in a haze. I have never, and hope to never, feel pain like that again in my life. I was sure I was going to die. The attending in the told me it's worse than childbirth and that they've had it before, too. I didn't text my girlfriend throughout because I really didn't have the strength or foresight. I was drugged up and uncomfortable. My sister found out that I had been in the emergency room, and soon after my girlfriend called me. She was pissed off I didn't call her. Then I reminded her that I begged her not to leave as I thought something was wrong. She got quiet and eked out an apology. I got furious and said something rather nasty things, unsavory things. In fairness, I was on dope, still sore, peeing blood, and felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Standing was incredibly painful. I needed to take 2 days off of work and school. I rested in bed, and the only thing you can think is the person who should have been there didn't even believe me. She's texted me this week a formal apology and wants one in return for saying nasty things to her. I've been avoiding her texts / calls. I felt like shit this week and picked something up in the So I laid low, took a few days off work and relaxed. She wants to meet tonight and talk about everything, but I'm still so mad I don't know if I should hold off seeing her. Is this as big a transgression as I feel like it is? Am I blowing this out of proportion because I felt so shitty? I just am so annoyed and angry. Girlfriend didn't believe me something was wrong, and I wound up in the with kidney stones and needed a procedure. She was mad that I didn't call her. I was too doped up, and then when I blew up at her she felt bad. I'm still mad at her. My husband, Asian, and I, American, welcomed our firstborn 4 weeks ago. The baby is healthy, thank God, but I'm exhausted, haven't fixed my hair, barely able to shower, and cannot sleep. My husband's family had been pressuring us to visit to meet the baby. I tried to hold them off as much as I could, but yesterday, I was surprised to find them standing on the porch. Turns out hubby invited them for dinner. I was embarrassed and felt like I wasn't ready for visitors, judgmental ones at that, cause the house was a mess, y'all. Anyways, my husband sat with them while I fed my son. Then later I asked my husband if we should order takeout for dinner. He said no, because his parents would find this rude and unwelcoming. He suggested that I go inside the kitchen and prepare something, anything long as it's homemade. I said fine, then went and made some mac and cheese. The reason I prepared this meal is because of how easy it is. Once I served the family, my husband's mom looked at me and was appalled. I noticed something was wrong. She asked if I really found it appropriate to serve her and the family mac and cheese. I asked why not, and she went on a rant about how disrespectful this was and that I clearly have no experience in what is right and wrong when it comes to hosting. I said, excuse me? Who said I signed up to host an expected visit from them? And she took it as in I didn't want them there. Her husband said they were just there to finally see the baby that I kept them from seeing for an entire month. That's a whole month of his life they missed out on. We had an argument and they decided to go home. My husband said that deciding to serve his family mac and cheese was more offensive than serving them nothing at all. I told him I was too exhausted to cook their traditional feasts, that I was forced to learn from his mom. He took offense and said that I was being mean and disrespectful towards not only his family but his culture. I went inside the bedroom to stay with my son. My husband stayed on the phone with his family for an hour, then kept giving me the cold shoulder, and refused to eat what I cook in support of his family. I understand how some guests might find it offensive, especially his family, but I was just trying to make a quick homemade meal like my husband wanted.